Okay.
Still freaks me out.
I know.
All right, so hit continue, right? Not leave meeting. All right. All right. So I guess we'll get into the 11th Amendment. Now, the 11th Amendment for me so far is probably the worst amendment. Some research as I'm reading it, even a couple weeks ago when we were going to do nullification, I had started reading it and was getting into it. And while it's a short amendment and it's not, it's all legalese is all it is. And it is just tough for me to wrap my head around exactly why this amendment was even put in. And it seems like today there's nothing that even resembles what I think this amendment was probably supposed to do. And hopefully David will have a little bit on that for me tonight, but it just seems like one of the more abused amendments. Anyway, let's get into it. So I made a mistake and I did a full-on presentation instead of the normal where I share when I'm in the video. So I know Jeff hates this, just excuse me here. So getting on the 11th. So a couple quick facts about the 11th. Once I got to reading about the 11th, I kind of understand where it came from now. I understand a lot better why it was put in there. And I still have no real understanding of what the hell it means today, to be honest with you. A couple quick facts though. So this amendment was proposed in March 1794. It was ratified in February 1795. 15 states at the time, they needed 12 for ratification. 12 ratified in 1795. South Carolina came on in 1797, which at that point didn't really matter. You know, I mean, they already had their 12. New Jersey and PA abstained from the vote. They never voted. Little fun fact though, is that New Jersey decided that they gave this long enough to make sure it was going to work, I guess. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what New Jersey was thinking, but in a symbolic action, they went ahead and ratified the 11th Amendment in 2018. So a little late to the game. I guess New Jersey was just all like, I don't know, this might not be a good idea. Maybe we're just going to wait for a little bit. And then when the world didn't explode, I guess they came in 2018 and decided they were going to ratify this thing.
No need to rush into anything.
You know what? We don't want to jump into this, right? Because this could be a big mistake. So we're going to wait for 200 years and then we're going to get involved. So it's been ratified now by 13. A bit of history on this. So there was already, if you remember, Article 3, Section 2, Clause 1. And you remember when we were reading that, Article 3 outlines what the Supreme Court's allowed to do, gives them, authorizes them certain powers. During the convention, the Anti-Federalists, who basically opposed everything that had to do with the Constitution, if you remember, they opposed Article 3, Section 2, Clause 1, and especially one section of it, which of that clause says let me pull this up real quick. So I'll just read real quick. If you guys have your rugged constitutions, your constitutions here. Article 3, Section 2, Clause 1, the judicial power shall extend to all cases in law and equity arising under the Constitution, the laws of the United States, and treaties made or which shall be made under their authority, to all cases affecting ambassadors, other public ministers and consuls, to all cases of admiralty and maritime jurisdiction, to controversies to which the United States shall be a party, to controversies between two or more states. And this is the big one that the Anti-Federals had a problem with. Between a state and citizens of other states, of another state, between citizens of different states, between citizens of the same state claiming lands under grants of different states, and between a state or the citizens thereof and foreign states, citizens, and subjects. So it's a whole lot of legalese. If you remember, we went through it. But the big thing that the Anti-Federals had a problem with were between a state and citizens of another state. Now you got to remember the Anti-Federalists were all about states' rights, and they were worried that this was going to take away from states' rights because they were saying, look, any mope can come along now and sue any other state, and a branch of the federal government is going to hear this thing, and they are going to take the state sovereignty away. You know, somebody can come from any other state, make any claim they want, and now the federal government's going to be the one to rule on that, and we don't like that. Of course, the Federalists came in, and the Federalists are like, well, everybody, let's just be cool here, right? Everybody knows state sovereignty is a thing. We don't have to spell state sovereignty out. Nobody is going to abuse state sovereignty. You guys are absolutely insane. Zero chance this happens. Just sit down and let the adults work. Okay, fair enough. Boom, 1793, Chisholm versus Georgia. You guys remember that case? That is where, and we talked about that, I think, in Article 3. So in 1793, a couple good old boys from South Carolina sued the state of Georgia for money owed to them from the American Revolution. And the federal Supreme Court ruled in favor of Chisholm, and Georgia had to pay up. So exactly what the Anti-Federalists said were going to happen, that they were assured by the Federalists would never, ever happen, happened only 5 years later. So as soon as that happened, if you remember, 1794, this thing was proposed. In 1795, it was ratified. So immediately upon Chisholm, the Anti-Federalists, all the states' rights people in Congress got together, and they said, look, we told you this was going to happen. Nobody believed this was going to happen. Now we need an amendment for this. And they got the 11th Amendment pushed through. So that's the history of it. So anybody got anything on the history? Any questions, any comments? David, anything?
I'll add it in later. I have some stuff, but I'll see where you go first.
Okay, fair enough.
I had also seen that a British citizen had sued Massachusetts because his property had been taken away from him during the war, right around the same time as Chisholm. So that's.
When was that? So, right around the same time?
Right.
Okay,
Right.
I didn't see that one. So yeah, so everything that the Anti-Federalists were worried about, that they were assured would never happen, was coming to pass now within 5 years of the Constitution being ratified. So what the 11th Amendment does here. So what it says the judicial power of the United States shall not be construed to extend to any suit in law or equity commenced or prosecuted against one of the United States by citizens of another state or by citizens or subjects of any foreign state. So you can see right now, just based on what me and Renee had told you, this is what this is for. This is covering everything we just said, that look, the federal government doesn't get to rule against the states in these issues. The states still maintain their sovereignty. If there's going to be something brought up, it's going to be brought up to the states, and the states are going to have it in their own state courts. So what it means really, and I think I got a good handle on it, but ultimately, I have no idea. This is one of those that just confuses me. I know what it means back in the day. I don't understand exactly how it's being applied today, because there's a whole lot of federal lawsuits. Anything you see coming through the Supreme Court where it is, Smith v. Georgia. I mean, that is exactly what these words are supposed to be preventing. So I still don't have a firm grasp on how it's being used today exactly, or what it's preventing today. I guess maybe David will be able to get into that a little bit better. But what we're going to talk about today is what the original intent was, what it meant. And this isn't one of those, yeah, somebody got something?
Yeah, I was gonna say, the only thing that I see in it that you might be missing was it bars suits against states by out-of-state citizens.
Correct.
Right.
Well, and that was the original intent. The original intent was just to stop suits from out of state.
And
Anybody who did not
foreign
live within-
citizens, right.
Correct.
Bar suits.
What's that?
It bars a citizen from another state suing a state in federal court. If they want to sue Georgia, they have to go to the Georgia state courts first and start there. They can't go right to federal court.
They can't go straight to the federal court. Okay, maybe
Right.
maybe that's it then. Maybe I am missing. When I look at all these cases, I guess I would have to see where they started. Now I know there are some times when they can go straight to federal court with them. And I'm not 100% sure on what those stipulations are, where you can go straight to federal court with it. And as we go through this is one of those things, like I said in the post tonight, I don't know if you guys read it or not on there. This is one of those things that the 11th Amendment will probably never, ever affect you, short of you suing your state or suing another state. This is one of those that will probably never affect you. It is more in there to protect the states than it is for you. But it's still part of the contract, right, between us and the federal government. And you guys know, contracts should always be read. So we're at least going to read this thing one time and get through it. But this is not one of those things that I think you really have to lose a whole lot of sleep in. Like, geez, I think I have an 11th Amendment issue here. I'll be honest with you. I didn't even know what the 11th Amendment was until I started researching it for this. So I feel bad about that, but whatever.
Did you see the little graphic in the Rugged Constitution, their little cartoon?
I did. The one with Texas.
Yeah, it says if you wish to sue the state of Texas, you'll have to sue in the courts of Texas. Uncle Sam can't help you.
Yeah.
But I think that's basically what it says. If you got a grievance with that state, you take it up with the state first. That's almost common sense though, isn't it?
Well, it was, right? But then
Right.
Article 3, Section 2 gave the federal government the power to hear those
Yeah.
cases. So it
Oh,
was
like
still
jurisdiction.
written, I guess.
Right, yeah.
My only problem with it is it was ill written, but it was brought up. It was brought up before ratification. They just blew
Right.
them off. They just blew the anti-federalists off. And think about this though, when you're dealing with something like this, where the anti-federalists came out and they said, look, you guys are making a huge mistake here. People are going to abuse this. We're telling you. And they said, nah. Imagine had they done this with the Bill of Rights. Because remember, the anti-federalists wanted the Bill of Rights in there. And the federalists were saying, look, you don't need it. That's just understood. Everybody understands these things that you want in there. But the anti-federalists held to their guns and said, look, we're not going to ratify this thing. We are not going to ratify this Constitution unless you add a Bill of Rights, which is how we ended up with the first 10. Had we not ended up with those first 10, it would have
my
been
God.
something like the 11th Amendment for every amendment. We would have been battling every single amendment. I think the Federalists just gave people too much credit, that they weren't going to usurp the authority and that they were going to just abide by, look, common law. We've always recognized state sovereignty. So why wouldn't we now?
Right.
So-
Well, right now we're at that point.
Well, we are.
Basically, if it doesn't give you that right in the Constitution and it doesn't have it expressly written in there, you don't have it. That
Right.
half the country believes that.
They do believe that. And that is going to be it's going to be a boiling point one day.
Yep.
Because they're wrong. All right. God, you're going to get me all fired up. I just stopped sweating. So the amendment was in direct response to Chisholm v. Georgia in 1793. 11th Amendment prohibits federal courts from hearing cases brought against a state by a citizen of another state, effectively confirms sovereign immunity as it applies to the states. So that is what the crux of the 11th Amendment is. Like we talked about, the anti-federalists wanted that addressed from day one, and the Federalists refused to do it. So because of that, now we have the 11th Amendment. Had they, we would never have the 11th Amendment had they just addressed this when they were supposed to address it. But what you're seeing here is Article 5 at work, right? And that's exactly what happened in 1795. That is an Article 5 process at work there. Supreme Court was delegated 8 powers in Article 3, Section 2. after Chisholm, states got together, decided it was absolute garbage, that the states did not maintain their sovereignty through this. And they got an amendment ratified that actually took a full power and part of one away from the Supreme Court. And that power that they took away, I think I just read it, but I just, hold on. That power they took away was obviously the section in Article 3, Section 2, Clause 1 that said between a state and citizen of another state. That was just completely struck from Article 3, Section 2. And they took away part of the part that says between a state or the citizens thereof and foreign states, citizens or subjects. And I would guess that's probably from what Renee was talking about, when we're being sued by British citizens. So Article 5 at work, man. I mean, that was, I think, one of the first, that was probably the earliest. And George
That-
Mason.
That was
What's that?
Vassal versus Massachusetts.
Oh, you're British?
Yeah, the British, William Vassal.
Right on. Oh, you know what? Yes. In all my reading, I do remember Vassal now. I don't remember where that was though. I think it was a podcast I was listening to. But yeah, George Mason gets Article 5 in. 5 years later, Article 5 comes to a head, and we're using Article 5 to get amendments pushed through. Ultimately, 13 states out of the 15, or 14, I guess, 14 states by 2018 at least. 14 out of the 15 wanted it. So there it is. We're moving through this one pretty quick, 8:30, but I knew we would because there's not a lot to it. But Dave, I know I asked you to help me out a little bit here and come up with some stuff about how it's being applied today. Did you have time to do it?
A little bit, yeah. I found a little bit of information that might be worth sharing. And first, I'll go backwards a little bit to understand why this even occurred, talking about the history. You have to keep in mind, I think, the dynamic tension that was going on during the Philadelphia Convention. During the Articles of Confederation arguments, it was pointed out that the federal government had no way to enforce the statutes that they were told that they had to enforce, and they might have to have military action against states. How else would it work? And part of the brilliance of the Constitution was that the focus was shifted to the citizen, to the individual. So they were eliminating, let me see if I can find my source here. They were going back to the founders' understandings. And let me read, this is from Harvard Law Review, 1822. This is already being debated. And in this law review, the idea is that the opinions on this amendment are either too far or too little, and nobody has actually gotten it right yet, and they're aiming at the courts. It says the keys to deciphering the amendment are the founders' understandings that the new Constitution, 1, did not authorize Congress to exercise legislative power over states as opposed to individuals. 2, did not guarantee individuals affirmative relief against states. 3, did not grant the federal government coercive power to enforce federal commands directly against states. That's kind of a lot of legalese language there. You touched on the argument between the Federalists and Anti-Federalists. And let me read here from another legal article. I can put the references in the notes here. The amendment states that judicial power shall not be construed to extend to prohibited suits. This amendment was known as an explanatory argument because it merely sought to explain or correct what was perceived to be a misinterpretation of pre-existing legal text. The amendment did not attempt to explain any other portions of Article 3 because the state citizen diversity provisions of Article 3 were the only provisions anyone ever suggested could be construed to permit individuals to sue states. So again, we see this dynamic tension between the individual, the state, and the federal government. How do they interact? What is equity? Can a citizen say, I have been wronged by a state or by the federal government? And what is their redress? what is equity? You know, in the world of the Constitutional Convention, that was a big deal. It was very important. And so you might say, well, they should have seen this is going to happen. But you're right. They gave the average citizen credit for understanding he was at the top of the food chain, then the states, then their federal government. We've gotten away from that. Questions, comments?
Oh, trust me, everybody's going to be real quiet tonight.
Amen, brother.
Everybody's going to be real quiet tonight because they are all looking at this 11th Amendment just like I was. I don't know why. This is the one that out of all of them.
Well, one would think it was unnecessary, but the need for it came about 4 years after they said it wouldn't be needed.
Nope, agreed.
So apparently it's needed, but it's again worth reemphasizing the point I made. It was done to restore the original intent of the founders, to restore what they interpreted to be their meaning. So we have a really clear interpretation of what they meant when they wrote the first one.
Half of them meant.
Well, right.
The Federalists were fine with it.
Yep.
You know, it was ill written.
Right.
For sure. I mean, it's not a perfect document.
No. And there were things in it that only were discovered through application to require clarification. Got to expect it. Got to break some eggs if you're going to make an omelet.
Right on. Yeah, no, nice. Anybody else? Anybody got anything? Questions, concerns about the 11th? No questions? Everybody understands
Is
the
there
11th?
anything going on in like today that has anything to do with the 11th Amendment? To kind of maybe put it in a more modern terms.
Well, you know what? And that's what I was trying to find today. I was trying to look up as I was going into this, just cases that where there was an 11th Amendment issue. And I mean, I couldn't find, I don't know if Dave, if you found anything, I just couldn't find a whole lot. I mean, I think most of the cases that are coming up in the federal courts are probably 11th Amendment issues, but nobody's claiming 11th Amendment violations or
And that's
anything.
probably true. That's probably it. It may be getting violated regularly and it's not getting flagged. Let me look for a second at my sources here. I did find something more recent, like 1999, that it was judged.
I was gonna say there's
Well,
there's
would,
two possible reasons for that. Like, one, I mean, you can't sue anybody without a lawyer these days. And is the lawyer going to take the case right to federal court when they know the 11th Amendment says they have to sue the state in the state's own judicial venue? Or the state's completely ignoring it because they do not financially want to have to worry about it. Go ahead, go to federal court. We'll solve it there.
Did not bar.
well, is this a situation where, you know how oftentimes the Supreme Court or federal courts will say that the person bringing the suit has no standing? Could that fall under this provision, you think?
The one thing that I did find, it says the 11th does affect us in today's global society, but it has little effect on the average citizen. So it sounds like most of the things are going to be against.
Well, you know what?
Or the
Kathy brings up a good
four
point.
things,
What
but
about
that's-
when Texas sued for the election and the Supreme Court came out and found that they had no standing? Is that because they went?
So federal court
Well,
first.
no, because that was a state. Right. The state
but
though
that-
sued. It
The
wasn't
state,
residents
yeah.
of the
Isn't
state.
It wasn't an individual.
Yeah, isn't that in the Article 3 that says disputes between the states from one state to another state has to occur in
Yeah,
federal
but
court?
that's not part of the 11th Amendment. So that
No.
would still stand.
Yeah. I'm trying to find need-
Hold on, so
I'll
Just
read you, let me
reading
read you a little tidbit here that I found. This is just a paragraph in another source. As Congress in the 20th century increasingly enacted regulatory legislation that applied to the states, questions arose about whether federal statutes could be enforced against states through suits in federal court. In Fitzpatrick versus Bitzer, 1976, the court held that Congress could subject states to suit in federal court through laws enacted under its 14th Amendment power to redress discriminatory state action. In Pennsylvania versus Union Gas, 1989, 5 justices voted to allow Congress to subject states to suit under the Superfund Act, enacted under Congress's Article 1 power to regulate interstate commerce. There was no majority opinion, however.
Huh. Yeah, well,
So
I
it seems to
suppose
be situation.
in that
I've
case,
just got a feeling that what Chris is looking for, we're not going to find. You know
yeah,
what? I have a
Yeah.
feeling that this is one of those amendments that is, like I said, is going to affect the states. It's not going to affect the people.
Right.
Because we know how the system works now. I mean, when you go to sue Ohio, you're not going straight to federal court with it, right? Everybody's going to go to Ohio.
but you could sue Ohio in federal court if they were breaking
Federal
EPA,
law.
right? Yeah, federal laws.
Correct. You can still go to federal court. The states still don't have jurisdiction over federal law. So, yeah, right. If Ohio is breaking federal law, you could still go straight there. But
Yeah.
I think this is going to be one of those things that after we talk about it tonight, probably for the rest of your life, you're never going to deal with the 11th Amendment again.
Right. I mean, it just
would
makes
guess.
sense.
I mean, what's your-
If you did a job for the state, you know, like your big, your airport concrete manufacturer, right? Very specific thing. And you build an airport for, you know, Ohio or Cleveland, you know, you didn't get paid. You don't take them to federal court. You go to court in Ohio
Right.
and sue them there to get paid, right?
The U.S. District Court in Ohio, correct.
Yeah.
Straight to federal court.
I think it just, yeah, it almost is common sense nowadays, right?
But like I said, it's one of those things that I think, I mean, if we're doing it, we're doing it. So we need to read it.
Right.
So now you understand it. So now tomorrow at the water cooler, you can be the smartest guy on your coffee break. Sit around
Yeah, I
and
did-
start talking
Yeah.
about the 11th Amendment.
I did find that denial of the 11th Amendment immunity and posted that link as well in the resources by week. So that's
Which?
a 1979 case from University of Chastings, California. Case that's cited there. State debt and the 11th Amendment. Look at this. This might be an interesting one. I'll post out there that anybody wants to read about. I found it, but I haven't. Oh. With COVID-related spending exacerbating state finances, we may be in for a major development of 11th Amendment doctrine. I'm going to post this in there. Just- So if anybody wants to read up on that.
What does that say?
It's a long article. Let's
I
see.
wish I would have found that because it doesn't get any more timely than that.
Yep. Let's see, last major changes did not come from the state debt crisis. Instead, state sovereign immunity was expanded as part of the so-called federalism resolution. Okay. Stormed and caused okay, however, COVID-19 has stormed and caused an explosion in local, state, and federal spending that could mimic the existential debt crisis, excuse me, that followed the Revolutionary and Civil Wars. States are bidding with each other for medical equipment and handling record unemployment payments. They're also losing sales tax revenue while localities are contractually obligated to run transportation services that they are not seeing used. In the next decade, we should watch for creditors knocking on state doors. Although Hans says that these creditors cannot collect from delinquent states in court, The volume of debt will no doubt convince some institutions that it is worth the legal fees of trying to get a case overruled. And the composition of the court has changed since the last round of state sovereign immunity cases. The best case would be for originalists and textualists on the court to convince their fellow justices to bring the 11th Amendment back to its words. This is necessary not only because we should not have judicially inserted extra constitutional amendments, but because in a rule of law society, the state should be accountable for its misdeeds. And when the sky doesn't fall, the justices may be more willing to abrogate other odious immunity doctrines like qualified immunity, which allows state and federal officers off the hook for constitutional violations. We should watch this new wave of cases carefully. It is just as likely that new sovereign immunity challenges could spur the court's federalist-minded judges to make common cause with those who feel sorry for the state's budget woes and expand immunity to cover state officers, municipalities that receive their own authority from the states.
Who wrote this article?
Very interesting.
Michael Collins, a former legal associate, is all he's got. I have
Who posted it?
Cato Institute.
Really?
Very interesting.
You know, I was all right until we got to the
I know.
qualified immunity.
Right.
part, Because that is not what qualified immunity is. It does not let law enforcement officers off for violating the Constitution.
Yep.
Um,
That's why I wanted to read it before or let people read it.
but Cato
It was
usually
a
pretty
commentary.
good.
And the article appeared on Law and Liberty on June 1st of 2020. So,
Yeah, I'm always, I get
but I'll
a
put
little
this so people
cautious
can
when
read.
you're talking about qualified immunity from,
Yeah.
people are saying things about qualified immunity that clearly they don't understand qualified immunity, because if I violate the Constitution, I'm not getting any qualified immunity. The only qualified immunity comes when I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't know. I'll have to read the article. All right.
I just shared a couple of good links in the chat there. If anybody wants to go pop over and look at those and save them, or we'll
I'll
copy
put,
them to the,
I'll put them in our,
yeah.
Yeah,
Here,
please.
actually, thinking about that though, with the 11th Amendment and with COVID and everything going on right now, that could open up a can of worms with the mandates and all that the governors were trying to push. No?
As far as what?
Would that open up the door for some lawsuits, I guess? I mean, with the mandates and everything that were being put on us?
Well, you got to remember the 11th Amendment is going to be restricting the government from what the federal government can do.
Right. Well, and they were trying to federally mandate the stuff.
Correct. And that would be, obviously there'd be an issue there because the federal government just doesn't have the right to tell all the states what the states are allowed to do. However, I think Ohio certainly has a right to say, look, we're going to mandate masks in all public spaces. I don't think there's going to be a constitutional issue there with that. I don't think. I mean, I think the states have a right to. Obviously, the problem was that it went too far, that kind of stuff.
Right.
I don't think the original mandate is unconstitutional, but I think when you have a mandate that's lasting for, how long that thing, 9 months. I mean, there comes a point, and it's from a, director of health who's not an elected official. I think that was.
That director of health, though, is definitely in that elected official's ear.
But you see,
Kathy's
the
hand is
system
up.
works, I guess. Who?
There's a hand up.
Whose hand? Who's at the
Mine,
beach?
Kathy.
Are you actually at the beach or is that a static picture?
Static picture, that's Pensacola Beach behind the Margaritaville Hotel.
Oh, I'll see you soon. I'm coming this weekend.
Hey,
I
David,
heard.
that first,
Yeah.
or that Constitution Center was the first link I had listed in there. Great one.
Well, I heard that
Kathy,
there's a
what's
somebody's filed a lawsuit against a college, and I believe it's in Indiana, because they're requiring students to get the vaccine. And there was a debate that I heard whether or not this might be fruitful, depending upon whether it's considered a private college or a public college. And the results could affect the outcome of that. This might be a similar, wouldn't this maybe fall under that 11th Amendment? Because you've got an institution that
Where's
nobody
the
can-
lawsuit though?
but we're not quite sure yet whether it's a federal federal or state or governmental institution, or it's a private college. And we've got federal regulations coming down through the school saying you can't come back unless you're COVID vaccinated.
Are there
With that-
federal regulations that say that?
Well, I mean, I think they're going by what the government is pushing, you know, Fauci and the whole caboodle there.
Yeah, but I don't think there's any mandates. I mean, they come out with their crazy talking points, and I think it's up to the individual schools right now. I think the problem with that's going to be is if it's a private school, they're probably going to get away with it.
Right, right.
If it's a public school, they may have big problems. I don't think they're going
Right.
to be able to get away with it if it's a school in college. But private school. they could
Yeah,
probably
and
get
that
away
was
with it.
that was the debate today. Is, you know, how will it be viewed? Will it be viewed as a public or a private institution?
And what is it? You don't know what school it is?
I don't remember the school. Sorry.
I think that would make a huge
Yeah, I mean-
difference, yes.
Yeah, right. I mean, if it's a private school, it's going to go all day. You're not going to be able to beat that.
It's
There's-
Indiana University.
IU?
That's public.
Yeah.
But here's something interesting. So Ben's graduation
school.
from basic is coming up. And although none of the airmen or soon to be airmen have to be vaccinated, nor does anyone in the service right now have to be vaccinated. Anyone
Actually,
attending basic
people in the
graduation
service, it is getting to that point now. where they're
has to be
required
vaccinated to it.
Well, and we can,
Not
you know
on,
what, we
not
can,
Air
what time
Force.
is it? We can talk about that more after, but you know what, I've questioned this whole military thing because I'm telling you right now, when I was in basic training, I didn't get it. Listen, I was getting smallpox. I sat there while they put guns up to, you know, those air guns up to each one of my arms and blasted me full of vaccines, and I didn't have a choice. So I don't understand why they have a choice with COVID. I mean, why isn't the military
Because
just
It's not FDA approved. Still not approved. It's still experimental. And
Yep.
if they ever find any side effects from it, and the government made their soldiers and take the shot, they've opened themselves up to a lawsuit, just like Agent Orange lawsuits.
Yep. Yeah,
you-
but
I guess, but
they're not mandating it, but they are doing the like, oh, you have to wear your mask if you're not fucking vaccinated everywhere. And everybody's looking at you like, hey, this guy wants COVID and he's gonna kill everybody, you know?
Piece around that though, Bill, is that when you get the COVID vaccine, you are signing a form that says that you are participating in a trial.
If the government mandates its soldiers to take the shot, they have made themselves liable to suit.
Then you have a choice to not continue in the service.
Okay,
I'd
you
like
just
to
made
see
my point
that.
for me. Thank you. Perfect.
all right, so we're off the 11th Amendment here. So questions, comments on the 11th? Before I move out?
But I was getting at
All
the
right,
lawsuit piece. You can't, they won't be able to sue them.
No,
If
but
the
the
government
disability
Oh,
will kick
there you
in.
go.
Shot.
nice work. Nice work bringing it
Yeah.
back.
Okay.
Although I don't know, really though, would they not be able to sue him?
Didn't
You're
they
not
sue
suing the state at
government for
that point, you're
Agent
suing the
Orange?
federal government.
It would be suing. The VA would give you a huge disability check. on
You guys
down.
are missing my point. In order for me to attend his basic graduation, I have to be vaccinated, but on base, they don't have to be vaccinated.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
well,
telling you, you have to be.
You have to be vaccinated, but he has to be vaccinated if he wants you
Are
to
they
come on
looking
base
at
for
you?
his graduation.
No, ma'am.
Yes, because I just got the paper for my son and it says that he's not allowed to be around people who are not vaccinated, so his visitors can't come. Okay,
Not at Laughlines.
That's where he's going. And
better
you
read
have to have your physical vaccine card.
And don't let it be laminated.
Show us your papers.
If you guys want to join my church, I can get you the religious cop-out card if you need it.
Oh, because you joined church.
Can I be a pastor? All right,
Yeah.
let's move on.
You can get it online.
All right, so I think we're done with the 11th.
I think
2 weeks. So listen, here's the deal too, is I'm going to end up moving this thing back 1 week. We're going to end up doing 2 consecutive weeks at one point. The reason I didn't do it, because the problem is the post discussion is now falling on days that I have to work on Wednesdays when we're doing it every other week. I wasn't thinking when I did it. So now I only have about a half hour to sit here and talk to people before I got to go to bed because I got to work at 5:30 in the morning. So I'm going to move it to the off week. I didn't do it this week because I'm going to Florida next week. So I'd rather skip while I'm in Florida. Because I tried that before and it didn't work. It was too hard. So probably after I come back from Florida, we'll go 2 weeks in a row. That way I can get back on my off weeks where I'm not having to get up at 5:30 in the morning. So, I mean, we'll still do it every other week. We'll still do it 9 o'clock. We're just gonna go back to back for 1 week or for 2 weeks.
So you're the only one that has a job and has to get up in the morning?
Well, it's all about like, so whatever. This is a Jim Tatership. I think we already talked about that.
So we're looking at then July 27th for our next meeting. And
Yeah.
then August 3rd.
Probably. It's just easier on me to, I mean, just with everything I got going on.
That's cool. I'm fine with that. I get
It's
it.
just easier on me to prepare and, not without having to worry about getting up. These things go late. And yes, Holly, it's all about me.
Hey, by the way, Jim, I just started watching that Turn series, and
Dude.
so far it is awesome.
It is going to stay awesome until the very last episode. It is incredible. It's the best
It's
show.
so
It is
true.
my favorite show ever. Those of you guys that have not seen Turn, it's all about Washington spies, the American Revolution. It is absolutely fantastic. I think it's on Netflix still.
It is. I'm watching it on Netflix. Yeah.
Netflix.
Oh, it is on Netflix? Okay, good. I'll look for it.
Absolutely.
Turn Washington Spies.
Absolutely one of my favorite, hands down, my favorite Revolution show that I've ever seen. Sons of Liberty is probably a second, but yeah, Turn's great. All right, so I will see whoever's going to go to the post. There's a whole lot to talk about, man. We've had a whole lot of stuff happening. I don't know if you guys have been
Texas.
following the news. God,
Oh,
there's
yeah.
crazy stuff happening. But I'll meet you guys over there. Renee, you're going to get that set up?
Yep, let me just close this one and get us, get the link posted and
Oh, God bless Texas. All right. He's gonna, yeah, talking about
Right on,
arresting
Brad.
those lawmakers when they come back.
oh yeah,
They're gonna get arrested. Woo-hoo.
Fantastic.
they're maybe arrested before they get back.
Save it for the post.
Yep, absolutely.
All right.
Nope, we're gonna talk about it right now, and I'm going to bed. I'll see you guys. Just kidding. All right, I'll see you guys in a minute.
See you
All
at the
right, bye.
post.
Yep, bye.